Great. First of all, welcome everyone for Traceability Industry webinar. It's great to get a very fantastic panel together with me, and I'm very happy that we're able to get together. Also, the participation seems to be extremely encouraging. We are now close to 430 participants and counting for the webinar. So let's start. Shivani, let me start with briefly introducing who is on the call. I'm Amit Gautam, founder and CEO of Textiles Genesis. We have Meryl with us from Hong Kong. She's fiber to product traceability lead, product manager at H&M Group. Purnil, she's joining from Denmark with Bestseller, materials manager, and leads the global materials management team and the strategy and the traceability objectives connected to it. We have Catherine from UK, Head of Materials and Sustainability, Clothing and Home at Marks and Spencer, and she's involved at Marks and Spencer to drive, both the net zero carbon business across all operations and value chain, looking both at home and apparel category. Then we have Harold Weghorst from Hong Kong, the Global VP of Marketing and Branding at Lenzing. And I'm sure everyone knows Lenzing quite well with all the fantastic work they're doing in introducing new innovations from fiber perspective. We have Duraiji Palanisamy from Erode or Coimbatore, maybe. I don't know, Duraiji, where you are. I guess in Erode, the Managing Director and Executive Director at VSM Pallava Group, which is a pretty sizable business, close to $400 million plus dollar business. And David Xu, the Global Business Manager at Hangzhou Jiayi Import and Export from China with 180 million business. And then we have Lalin, Assistant General Manager of GMS Composite Knits from Bangladesh, a quarter of a billion, so 250 million turnover. And what's interesting is, which I feel very encouraged, is to be able to get across industry voices, the cross-industry perspective from brands all the way at the beginning of the chain from fiber producers, but also very importantly in traceability is the work that's done in the supply chain, the work that's done at the spinning stage, the transformation into great fabric woven or knitted, the dyeing and finishing process, and of course finished product. So it's really great to see three leading suppliers across the supply chain to share their perspective on traceability. So if we move on, Shivani, in terms of the agenda for the webinar, we'll start with a very brief introduction from my side, just kind of painting the stage of why traceability has been such a massive problem in the textile industry, and why it's not that much of a problem, for example, in automotive or electronics. Just comparing a bit of fashion textile with other industries and what makes it so unique and why traceability is a challenge. Then we immediately go into more of a panel discussion with three key leading brands who are on the panel with H&M Group, with Bestseller, Marks and Spencer, discussing different topics connected to the traceability. And then we move on to actually a fiber perspective from Lenzing, with Harold sharing their traceability objectives, the importance and challenges, and then the key learnings and best practices from supplier. As we were discussing earlier, suppliers is what we see is the backbone of any traceability program. And of course, if the backbone doesn't function well, nothing functions well. And if the backbone is doing extremely good, I think the entire traceability program works extremely smooth. So this is a critical part of our conversation today, to understand the best practices from three leading suppliers across the world. And then we open up for Q&A. There is a button at the bottom of you would see on the, I think just after on the bottom you would see Q&A. So please feel free to ask questions as we move along. And our team would be selecting, because if you have a lot of questions, we'll be selecting specific questions and then open it up to brands, to fiber producers, or to the suppliers to actually respond to those questions. So with that, let me then start with sharing very briefly how textile and fashion industry compares, let's say, with other two industries, right? Especially if you look at consumer electronics and automotive. So if you look at automotive and electronics, I mean, these are two very large industries at 1.2 trillion to 2.2 trillion. Very pervasive. We see, electronics everywhere around us. We see, of course, cars everywhere around us. Pretty sizable, but the interesting part of these two industries is the market share of top 10 brands. If you look at electronics, you have Apple, Samsung, a couple of Chinese and Indian manufacturers, and then the market share is close to 95%, right? When you go to automotive, the market share of top 10 leading global brands, few large American manufacturers, in Europe, Japanese, a few Chinese and Indian, and then again, your market share of top 10 brands is close to 80%. Now, when it comes to fashion and textile, is a very different landscape. First of all, it's one of the largest industry on the planet. Yeah. So fashion and textile globally is about $2.4 trillion versus automotive at 2.2 trillion and consumer electronics at 1.2. So it's actually double of global electronics, even bigger than automotive. One of the biggest industry on the planet, but at the same time, when you look at the market share of the top 10 largest global brands, is less than 10%. Yeah. So it's also one of the most fragmented industry, not only the largest, but one of the most fragmented industry. And why is it important? Because the level of fragmentation is an indication of how, intransparent or opaque the industry could become. And in fact, if you look at the three largest global brands across, in the industry, with H&M Group, Inditex Group, and Fast Retailing, Uniqlo, between them over the last 10 to 15 years, perhaps 10 new brands have been launched. Because a lot of these groups have more brands than just the flagship brands, right? So if you look at H&M, you have Arcade, other stories. Same thing with Inditex, with Massimo Dutti, and of course the same thing with Fast Retailing. Now this fragmentation continues later as well. So if you move on to the next part, entire value chain is extremely long and complex, and a lot of you are expert in this value chain, so I don't have to actually help you understand. But the key part here is that when you look at the farm origin for natural fibers or for animal derived fibers, whether it's wool, cashmere, alpaca, or on the cotton side or on the linen side, and then you have the whole entire fiber production process, the spinning, weaving, knitting. And what's very important, there's a lot of blending that happens across the entire value chain. There are very few materials now, especially if you look at, in the new product introductions, which are mono material. Typically, you would see, cotton being blended with viscose, a little bit of elastane coming in, and the requirements of the industry are such that we see more and more blends coming up across the entire product categories, whether it's denim, whether it's wovens, knitted, and even in the home products. Yeah, and this is part of the reason, the fact that industry value chain is so long and complex, what makes it so opaque to the consumers and so difficult for players to conduct and to create traceability. Yeah. So with that, just setting the stage, we are not talking about a solution. We're just saying, why is it so difficult? But now let's go into how brands are actually tackling that challenge and how brands are actually addressing those challenges from traceability perspective. So if I move on then to our panel. So we have Meryl from H&M Group, we have Purnil from Bestseller, we have Catherine and Sandra. So sorry, Sandra, I forgot to introduce you in the beginning. We have also Sandra from Marks and Spencer Group joining from UK. So it's a pretty diverse group, also geographically. So let me start first with closer to let's say home. I'm based in Amsterdam right now. So let's start with M&S Group, Catherine, with you. So how does traceability contribute to your overall sustainability objectives and corporate objectives? Could you just paint a bit of picture of how you are weaving and integrating traceability in your strategy and targets?
Yeah, thanks, Amit. Good morning. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So at M&S, we've been sourcing and making products for a very long time. I think it's about 137 years. And we pioneered a kind of industry-leading, fully integrated Plan A back in 2007, which was then reset in 2021. And we had a singular focus on then kind of looking at net zero and looking at the business across our operations, but also our entire value chain, with the aim to becoming net zero by 2040. So quality, trusted value is at the heart of everything we're offering to our customers, and we're just wanting to ensure that's done in a sustainable way. So for every M&S product, our clear goal is to use responsibly sourced raw materials. And so today, sustainability runs through all of our strategic priorities to provide the foundation of our plans that's reshaping our growth that is sustainable in every sense. So we've got our targets for 2025 and 2030, and we've got a real clear roadmap that's identifying the priorities for our journey to net zero. I think what's been really important for us is to find traceability platforms and partners that support us in upholding our stringent policies and our certification requirements. And that's been a focus for us for the last sort of 2-3 years. We've been committing to replacing our core fibres, cotton, polyester, the man-made cellulosics, with more sustainable alternatives by 2025. And we want to source from more sustainable sources with proven environmental and social impact. And traceability is really kind of allowing us to be confident that the materials we're sourcing do meet that criteria. But it also enables us to communicate where we've switched to like more preferred fibres to our customer, and it gives us confidence to do that. And I think then, as the majority of our carbon footprint comes from indirect, so our Scope 3 emissions, they're coming from our value chain with our supply partners. And the majority of those are sitting in tier 2 and 3. So traceability is giving us that full visibility of the facilities, and therefore making sure that we're prioritising the right suppliers for our work to reduce our emissions. So together with our partners and our suppliers, we're just committed to make sure that we've got our products of the highest quality, and traceability is just a really big part of that process for us at M&S. So it really is interwoven into our sustainability strategy, and I don't think really you can have sustainability without traceability.
No, that's a great way to and kind of finish it off, Catherine, because we also often say, traceability and sustainability are two sides of the same coin, right? You can't, make any credible sustainability objectives without underpinning it with traceability. So very exciting in terms of what you're doing, and in terms of your objectives, that 2025 you want to shift towards 100%, or that comes in 2030 in terms of your.
Yes, 80% of our fibre mix is the cotton, polyester and the MMCF. So we're aiming for those to be 100% for 2025. Cotton, we're already there. So it's the polyester and the MMCF. So lots of work to do. And we like to have really challenging targets at M&S. So yeah, we're working hard to try and reach those.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty uphill climb in the next two years to achieve 100%. So it's a fantastic stretch target. Let's get the perspective from Bestseller Group. Pernil, could you just paint a bit of a picture of how you are weaving traceability into your strategy, into your corporate objectives, also into sustainability, and how you're achieving it within Bestseller Group?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Amit. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here and be able to bring a brand perspective to the discussion of traceability and sustainability across textiles and apparels. I would like actually to throw in the word transparency as well into the discussion, as I think that, as Catherine just mentioned, we can't do sustainability or real true sustainability without having traceability for our products as well as our materials, all the way from finished product back to raw materials. And we can't have, in my opinion, traceability of materials if we don't have transparency to the supply chain. So these two things are also very much interlinked. For Bestseller, traceability of our products and materials does not only contribute to our material targets. We have specific targets on our biggest fibers, cotton, man-made cellulosics, and polyester, where product traceability and materials traceability helps us to reach those targets simply by understanding the whole supply chain of those products. We also have a target on placing more orders with suppliers who are highly rated on sustainability, and with that we really need the supply chain transparency and products materials traceability in order to support that target. So in a broader sense, we believe at Bestseller that traceability supports also our supply chain targets, our supply chain transparency targets, and supports us in moving the needle in the supply chain. The improvements that are needed in the supply chain traceability is also supporting, transparency is also supporting on that, where we work very close with our supply chain, but also across the industry. Also now we are sitting different brands together who we would normally be looked at as maybe competitors, but we are really on a joint movement here on improving collaboration, or we can only achieve this with a collaborative approach across the whole value chain.
Yeah, I think this is a great thought, Pernille. I think this is probably, just 10 years ago would have been unimaginable that competitors coming together, working in a very open, using your word transparent manner in terms of how to drive things together. But this is also what we find exciting about this space is that you can bring industry actors who might be in the market competing, but this is a common objective, especially with supply chain partners in mind, because it creates significant benefits, efficiencies, as you said, Pernille, around supply chain actors. What was also very interesting is what you were mentioning about that you are incorporating a lot of these objectives in supplier kind of performance scorecards, their KPIs, and then incentivizing suppliers. So you're making it actually, pretty tangible, and it no longer remains a theoretical concept if your business goes up and down depending on how you perform on transparency objectives or traceability. And how do you do that? You do it annual review with the suppliers on those objectives?
No, it is a continuous rating that gets frequently updated, and it's that's also transparency, right? Bringing the visibility to each and individual supplier on how they are performing, as well as to all of our brands. So it bringing transparency to our brands where orders should be placed in order to receive that target. But I think just if I can just add one more comment, Amit.
Yeah.
This like very pragmatic approach I really think is needed, and the collaborative kind of movement we can do if we are to meet our targets across brands, or if we are to meet coming legislation or regulations in general. We can do two things, right? We can push everything down the value chain, or we can actually change. And that's what I mean with improvements in the supply chain and in the value chain, and bringing the understanding and the why also to the supply chain. So it's not just an extra layer or extra work, or but there is no understanding of why. So I think that's really a responsibility that sits with us as the end of the value chain.
Okay. No, very, very good. I think this is a great perspective, and I'm sure once we suppliers would benefit a lot more to hear when we come back towards the end of our panel discussion, or what the message you want to send to the supply chain actors. Now, if you move to Meryl from H&M Group, Meryl, we have been involved for a long time. I think you were one of, let's say, the seeding, energy behind when we started, also with the H&M Foundation Award. Also, H&M Group in general has been driving, I think, traceability for a pretty long time. How do you see your journey has evolved over the last few years? How has it shifted? And, how are you actually further embedding it within your business processes and strategy? Yeah.
You're right. We've been working with Textile Genesis, was it like 3-4 years now? It's been a bit of a journey, and I think, and we've been working on traceability for longer than that. So we've been working on different traceability platforms for longer. We've co-created them. We've had some success. We've had some failures. We've had some learnings. And then coming across Textile Genesis, I think you and I, Amit, we had some discussions early on, and it was quite clear that we had very similar ideas of how we should approach traceability. And it's not just about having a good platform, which Textile Genesis has, but it's also about having a good understanding of the supply chain and understanding how and sharing a vision of how we can make it happen at scale in a fiber forwards way. So that's kind of why we started working with you, as you know, and maybe to share with the audience as well. So we started with a proof of concept. We didn't just dive straight into rolling things out. We tried out the platform, proof of concept with a few products. We then moved on to doing scaled pilots, because when we're working with big companies, we're big scale. We need to understand, does this platform actually hold up when we actually roll this out to a very big level? So that's what we then did for a year. And then I think that is really where we had lots of really good learnings, and we took those on board and evolved the approach. And then we rolled out, which we've been doing since last year, right? I want to say middle of last year. And now we've rolled out to all of our man-made cellulosic fibers and all of our recycled polyester. And I think those were two fibers that were two fiber groups that made very good candidates to roll out with, because at least for us, we already had a fairly good visibility or supply chain mapping of it. So we kind of knew where to start. And we also saw the opportunity of working together with the industry as a whole. And even though, this is a very large and complex industry that we all operate in, and I think, Amit, you painted a good picture of that at the beginning, but that also naturally poses a very big challenge for rolling out such a solution. So we somehow have to find each other, and we have to kind of align with each other on how we want to do things. And frankly, this has not been done before. So we also have to be agile enough to constantly evolve the ways of doing things. We have to kind of figure out, okay, this is not working, let's try it in this way, let's try it in this way. So we have to align on the ways of doing things. We also have to align on why we're doing it. So that takes time, and it's not just us convincing our internal organization, it's also convincing the whole supply chain at large of how are we going to do this, and constantly iterating. And it's really a journey in itself. And I think something that we don't often talk about when we talk about supply chain engagement and these obstacles and the complexity of the supply chain, but one of the challenges is, and actually opportunities, is also technical integration and data standardization. This is something that we need to address more and more going forward, where we're talking about a lot of data exchange and a lot of data transparency, and we need to make it as easy as possible to do that. So for us, technical integrations have been quite a key thing that we focused on over the past year as well, to enable that scale. And that has come with some challenges, and we're still working on it. But I think that's something, there's a lot of learnings we can take forward from that. And I also hope to see that other supply chain actors and others in the industry will see that integrations are the way forward, and then also figuring out how can we data standardize so that we make it as easy as possible for everyone to participate in traceability and really lower the obstacles. So yeah, a lot of learnings along the journey of rolling out traceability initiatives.
Absolutely.
And many more to come as well, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think you started much earlier, and you've seen the whole cycle. And some of the terms you used, iterative, agile, essentially points to the fact of continuous learning, continuous improvement. It's a journey that you'll never arrive home. You'll just continue the path, because the fact that every other month you come up with new topics, new aspects. Recently, for example, the legislation part has become so important. So the question comes, okay, as we are collecting key data across the supply chain, what else we can capture that actually also might help support compliance and legislative requirements. But just building on this idea of iteration and agile. So if you look at over the last few years, and you already started painting a bit of that picture around technical integration. But if you have to pick, let's say, top 2 or 3 challenges that you faced in the journey, and what has been the key learnings, or even how did you address those challenges, I think would be quite helpful for the audience.
I'd say supply chain engagement is probably the biggest challenge, and and also is the biggest opportunity. That's really where we're gonna, we really need to work towards getting this critical mass of usage on the platform, and then everything becomes a lot smoother. And that is really about a mindset shift. So I think supply chain engagement is for us really, really the top. Data standardization and the lack thereof at the moment in the industry for traceability data, I think that's the second top one. Sorry, the second one, and then third one. What would the third one be? I don't know, Amit. What's the third one? Maybe there's just two.
Yeah, yes. I think perhaps I think you data standardization is one part. You talked about supply chain engagement. Those are really the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would imagine is, just traceability itself, even defining what it means, because, for different brands, it means very different topics. For some, it's about collecting everything from tier 1. For others, it's about, following tier 1 to tier 2. Like what we do with the actors here on the call is more about fiber forwards, starting with the beginning. So there's still quite some evolution to be done to have a common understanding of when you collect data, the integrity of data. I mean, one is standardization, and another is, how to ensure the quality and integrity of data is actually continuously improving. And I think these are in a way interconnected pieces. The more you standardize, the better it is for suppliers to share good quality data, and better you can also drive supplier engagement, right?
Yeah, and I think maybe just to add also, I think it's not really spoken about is that we need to constantly innovate. I know we talk about constant improvement and agile, but innovation is then something different as well, where we need to find new ways of doing things in a more, find innovations, bring them up just as we've done with Textile Genesis, kind of go from seed and develop it further. May that be different methods or solutions that we kind of add to that and create an ecosystem where innovation can kind of thrive so that we can make it simpler and get the data integrity as high as possible. So yeah, innovation as well, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Yeah, I think, for example, we are experimenting with bots. Can we read documents, invoice, PO upload, packing list, and automatically verify the document, especially in different languages, becomes a very complex problem. I think the innovation of even bringing all auditing bodies into a unified system to eliminate PDF paper-based TC, I mean, it is years in making, and we still have a long way to go. But that's a major industry level innovation where you say, look, no more paper-based TCs. Actually, you can actually run it like your banking application. You don't need to write a check. I don't know. Let me just quickly, how many of you wrote a bank check in the last 12 months? Raise your hand.
I live in Hong Kong. We still do checks, so I'm sure.
And actually, probably I wrote one. So only 2 people in the audience who wrote a check. So Raji, you have never written a check in the last 12 months. You're doing everything through the banking. So I think this is the whole shift we're talking about, moving away from paper, PDF based to a digital banking. When we talk about digital traceability, creating an inventory ledger, transaction ledger. Now let me move on to Catherine and Sandra. What are some of the top 2 to 3 challenges that you have seen as you have embarked on this journey, and what has been some learnings from that? Sandra, Catherine?
Well, okay, the first learning, sorry, Catherine, I was expecting you to jump in. Let me just answer that. I think the first one is around traceability being, the main challenges I think are around the scale. The scale is absolutely massive. Fortunately, yeah, obviously we've got those cases where we're not working with vertical suppliers and then bringing those suppliers in, similar to what Morelli was saying. Obviously, as an on-brand retailer, we are quite well positioned to build those really strong partnerships and partner with them kind of all the way through and go deeper into our supply chain. And so I think that then is that links to that learning for us, which is around really bringing traceability and sustainability into our business model. And that's something we've managed to do quite successfully now over recent years. So sustainability underpins all of our strategic priorities, and we're really focusing on building strong partnerships with our supply base. And traceability it's becoming that standard way of working. So, and I think that's the message we need to kind of send out to all of the industry, that it becomes the standard way of working when your inventory or your, whether it's the yarn or the fabric or then the finished product is shipped, making that chain, kind of tracking that on the platform so that we're all, that's kind of becoming an integral part of the business process. I think that's the message for us that we need to land as we're rolling out traceability to our suppliers. And I think we've just managed to build quite a strong partnership with our sourcing office colleagues, Textile Genesis, our supply base, to help kind of land that message that it's that standard. It's going to be that standard way of working through the supply chain.
Right. And you're saying essentially, engagement of the regional offices, and of course, driving it in a standardized way, and that this is the new normal, right? That we entered into a new territory in the industry, and this is the new normal, and there's no escape route. There's no escape room which you can run away from this, because as industry as a whole is moving in this direction. This is where the tides are shifting. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just the industry, it's also just from a consumer point of view, that awareness of environmental issues is really growing. They're interested in where the materials are coming from, where their clothes are coming from in general, and they're really pushing us as brands, and then therefore the whole supply chain to really make this a priority.
That's a great point. Absolutely. I think consumers are becoming much smarter, much more aware, especially the younger generation is much more focused on understanding the brand values, the ethics of production. And I think that especially, I would say in Europe and US is shifting very, very fast. Yeah. Now, Pernil, if you have to highlight a couple of, let's say top 2-3 challenges that, and how did you address this on your traceability journey? Just hearing what, Meryl and Sandra shared.
Yeah, I think that, I echo completely what both Meryl and Sandra said. I would have started with, as Meryl, with supply chain engagement and data. We've been on this train towards traceability, or on the traceability train together with Textile Genesis for also quite some years now, starting off with a very small handheld pilot, reaching out to a few of our suppliers, where we knew the understanding was already there, tried to see how does this work. Then we took later steps with focusing on a specific fiber group, enlarging the group of suppliers, and then as we did that, the kind of understanding in the supply chain was the biggest challenge, and engaging the supply chain. And also, I think internally understanding I think you talked about it also in the beginning, how fragmented and complex a textile supply chain actually is. So there were also some really key internal learnings on how do we, from the brand and retailer side, move forward here. Can we continue with that level of fragmentation in our supply chain if we look 5, 10, 15 years ahead? And this is what we need to do, right? We want to stay in business and continue to have, to continue to grow, meet customer and other stakeholder demands. So internal learnings have for sure also been there. Then the data part, I completely agree. How we can make processes more automatic. It is a big towards the supply chain. Also, again, internally, it's a lot more data. It's a different kind of data. We're asking for a lot more data than we've previously done. And bringing then again the understanding. So I'm going back to the why I mentioned before, why we are actually asking this, why it's not a brand wanting to, how can I say, go into the kitchen of our supply chain and steal a secret recipe, but why this is actually a must going forward, not only to protect brand's business, but also the business of the supply chain. So I think it's really, learnings have been really broad, and we are still on the journey. So understanding that this is a journey and embracing that journey and being on it step by step together with the whole value chain, I think is the biggest learning. Not being afraid to step in that space where we say we are actually on this journey together as a whole value chain, because none of us is going to stay if we are not. And then build up this common language when we talk about transparency, traceability, and sustainability, and how these words and mechanisms are interlinked and will be even more interlinked in the future.
Okay, no, very clear, very clear. Purnil, so then this is again building on exactly the same themes, but I think it's a very interesting points of actually we need to deal with the fragmentation and again this is an industry what we're looking at, and that's also part of the reason why it has been so challenging to create traceability. And you address some of the similar point themes that came up earlier around supplier engagement and also on the standardization aspect. Now, if I start with you and then work with other brands, just say one key message for suppliers and the audience why they should care about sustainability or traceability. So, what is in your mind the topmost reason, if you want to share the key message from your side to the supply chain partners, why should they care about traceability?
I mean, going forward, for all of us, no matter where we are in the supply chain, transparency and materials traceability must be the standard way of working, and it needs to be a precondition across our industry, not only to meet regulatory requirements, but also to drive improvements in the supply chain and to as you said before, deal with this fragmentation or fragmented supply chain that we have.
Right. So you said, I mean, there's a standard way of working. This is where the industry is moving, and it also, of course, drives innovation, deeper partnerships if they care about traceability, because then brands can collaborate more deeply. But it's a way the industry is moving, the standard way of working. Sandra, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. No, sorry. And it is a collaborative approach, and the work needs to be done, right? And we can't sit in silos, different links in the supply chain, and do our own work.
Absolutely. And Sandra, Catherine, what do you say when supply chain partners come to you and say, look, it's a lot of effort, it's additional work, we have to do this, we have to do that. What's your topmost message? Why should they care and invest and actually evolve their own processes? Because suppliers have to also create new processes in their system or create new, better IT systems to actually contribute data. So what's your top message to them?
So I think it's definitely that we recognise the scale of the challenge is huge, as I think you were saying at the beginning, and with the global supply chains and the fragmentation, it is a challenge for all suppliers in the chain. And I think one of the main things we want to know is we're there together as an industry. I think Meryl and Purnil both said about being collaborative across the industry. I think that's what we're also trying to do, with our suppliers and with the layers and the chains of the suppliers. But I think one of the key things is we need to align our strategic business goals with our suppliers. And I think, secondly, legislation is coming. So whether we like it or not, this transparency and traceability, we've all got to have to work together to ensure that we are working within the legislation. But I really think the most important thing for all of us is just collaboration, working in partnership, and making sure that we all deliver together, because suppliers are part of every retailer and brand's journey, and it's important that we work together with our supply chain partners.
Right. Okay. So it's a joint objective. It's not just objectives of brand, it's for the whole value chain to deliver on those traceability objectives. And it is about kind of deepening that partnership. And the second, I think, key point is related is, of course, legislation is coming. So it's a license to operate. If suppliers don't evolve their processes, they might, in certain specific regions or countries, may not be able to supply products. So that's it's a license to operate to supply on that business. Yeah. Meryl, what are your key messages? Because you have also been on this journey through several phases. What do you tell suppliers when they say, look, it's cumbersome, it's time consuming? What's your top messages to suppliers that they should engage on traceability?
I mean, I think Purnil and Sandra already said it, and I completely agree with them. It's quite simple. I think we need traceability for business continuity. All of us need it. So it's something that we have to tackle together. We have to look for shared solutions, and this is an invitation to work together, to have collective action, and to participate together in making the traceability work. So yeah, it's quite simple. We have to do it. to continue our business. And that's really relevant for all of us. There might be multiple objectives and multiple drivers that traceability contributes to, but I think foundationally, it's about business continuity.
I think that's a great way to kind of wrap up the conversation. You said that, look, this is a completely necessary and an important muscle that industry has to build. This muscle we never practiced. This muscle is very weak, let's say, in the body. And we need to build this muscle if we have to lift a weight. And this is the industry and consumers and legislations, everyone requires us to do. And this is a muscle we have to build. And we have never practiced this traceability muscle. And that's what needs to be done. Basically, this is the work that needs to be done, and it must be done, and we have to come together to achieve it. Now, with that, let's move on to our very good panelists on the across the supply chain. Yeah, because as we discussed, and this was one of the common themes that was highlighted by all of the brands on the call, supply engagement is fundamental, value chain engagement is fundamental. And of course, everything starts at the beginning with the fiber itself, right? So here we have Harold with us. Thanks, Harold, for joining. Good to see you. VP of Marketing and Branding at Lenzing. So Harold, over to you to share your perspective on how Lenzing is driving traceability, also your perspective on sustainability and overall importance and challenges.
Thank you, Amit, and yeah, pleasure to be a part of this this panel. Shivani, could you forward the next slide? So I feel privileged being in this panel as the only one representing, say, the start of the whole value chain, which is the raw material, and that is our main task. I would like to open with what we call our purpose, and that's really to improve the world with better choices. And this sounds big, and it goes also beyond us as a company, because what we can do as a company, even though we are not a small company, it's still a 2.5 billion euro company. But if we do it only for us, it's not going to make an impact. We want to make an impact for the entire industry. And we have, as an industry, we have so many challenges in terms of environment, whether we talk about the carbon emission or our waste reduction or improving circularity. These are all, key topics which are part of the whole sustainability. And for us, everything what we do is centered around sustainability. And I think it was Catherine who mentioned that, yeah, there's no sustainability without transparency. So next slide, please. So for us, these are indeed, like Amit was also saying, two sides of the same coin. So transparency is very important, and now is the time, because we see that consumers want to know more about what are the materials that my apparel is made of, my shirt or my denim or whatever is made of. We also see a strong drive from authorities with new regulations. And at the same time, I am appalled by the amount of greenwashing that we see. And this is something we really need to fight. And transparency, Amit started in the beginning with transparency, the fact that our industry is one of the largest industries, but one of the least transparent industries, is actually very opaque. So transparency is for me, it's the how. This is an enabler. It's not a goal in itself, but it's an enabler to achieve a higher degree of sustainability. And I believe the benefits go even beyond sustainability, but I'm also thinking about addressing topics of social responsibility, but also identifying waste in the value chain, improving efficiencies, cost efficiency, improving data insights. There's a lot of benefits in that. We have within our company, we have this 4-pillar approach to transparency, and that is shown in the next slide, which starts with sharing, because if you want to be transparent, you also have to share what you do yourself. What are your efforts? What what do you measure, what is important, where are you currently? So the sharing part is very important. Then next is partnering, also mentioned by some of you already. Transparency and traceability is not something which can be done unilaterally. This is something we really have to do together. It's a collaborative effort. Otherwise, it's a broken system. So that's easier said than done, but it's an important pillar we work on. Proof, I think that is more also about the traceability, being able to identify and physically prove also and validate how true your products are. And then last but not least, and that's also related to traceability, that's tracking. And for the tracking, we have also been one of the early adapters, definitely, of Textile Genesis, and we believe very much in them as a partner to drive this transparency, and that's why we have started this journey together. So this is our 4-pillar approach. Next slide, please. And also mentioned, I think, this is Meryl mentioned it. It's a journey we are on, and this journey is far from finished. So we still have a long way to go. We also need to be able to adapt and to the circumstances, because there is not one single way. But what is key for me, that this is something we have to really do together, and it requires full value chain engagement. And with that, I would like to hand over back to the panel, and happy to answer any questions there. But I think Q&A comes at the end.
Yes. So thanks, Harold. I think this was a very, very insightful and very precise, very clear overview from your side. And also you highlighted, I think, thanks for your support. And in this journey, I think Lenzing was perhaps one of the first customer that we had an agreement with way back when we started in 2019. So really 5 years ago. Very first customer who believed in this crazy idea. And then, and the rest is, just looking at the last 5 years. So it's really very deep collaboration, and thanks for your support and also leadership in this space. Now, one of the questions that comes from Willie, and I also want to just look at some of our brand partners who are on the call, just to also break the rhythm that we don't go just immediately presentation to presentation. So Willie is from Schneider Group, based in Biella. Schneider is one of the leading wool supplier. And Harold, in your case, you have some visibility downstream, right? You understand a bit of where Tencel, you don't know the nature of relationship between actors, but you understand, okay, specific mills are using Tencel materials, or fabric mills or garment makers. Now, Willie is asking, saying we have been using TG for 5 years now. It's great. However, the traceability is currently only for brands, and growers, so he's referring more to the wool growers, should also be given, or maybe tops manufacture the same traceability rights to know where their wool is going, right? Just like brands know where the material comes from, the question is, do the material providers, like Lenzing, or let's say in the wool side, they should have also have equal access, right, to understand where the material is ending up. Maybe not the nature of relationship, because that could be, downward integration perspective confidential, but at least knowing where the actors are. So I would like to check with, get thoughts of Meryl, Pernille, Catherine, and Sandra, that is this something brands are kind of willing to explore, or are you comfortable with that in terms of for material players to have that visibility where the material, so for a wool player to know, look, H&M is using their material, or Bestseller is using their material, or M&S is using their material.
is it open question? Maybe I can.
Yes, it's an open question.
Yeah.
Any of you could jump in. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, open to the discussion. And I think anything that has a very clear and valid reason for why the data or why the information transparency is needed, we should be able to talk about that openly. And so I would welcome the discussion and understand the reasons and why, what it's been used for. And there's no reason we can't talk about that. So that's more my thought on it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Meryl there as well. I think definitely open to discussing, and again, just depending on how the data is going to be used, but I'm sure that wouldn't be a challenge.
Neil, you were saying.
No, I just agree with Catherine and Meryl as well on this one. I open to the discussion and understanding the why from the other end of the value chain, as well as we are to bring our why through the value chain. So yeah, absolutely open to the discussion.
Yeah, no, now let's start with the why. We don't have to wait that long because Harold is on the call. So Harold, so why from Lenzing perspective? Because when we started with you for the Lenzing, we give that visibility to you that which actors are processing Tencel tokens or EcoVero tokens, but of course you don't know which spinner is shipping to which fabric mill and which fabric mill is shipping to which garment maker. So don't know the network effect, but the nodes in the network that are processing your material. How do you use that data, and why is it important to you?
So from a bigger perspective, I think transparency, the word in itself is means also a lot of things, but it means openness. And I think if there is then a lack of transparency somewhere in the value chain, that means that it's broken, and that means that there is no transparency. So what I said, it's really it requires full engagement. And my experience also in other industries is that yes, there may be resistance to giving that transparency, because data is power, and data can be sensitive. But I think if we all want to drive the same course, and that is a higher sustainability, we have to use transparency as an enabler and give each other also much more sustainable transparency than we have now. And within other industries, I have seen it that this really improves, multiplies even the efficiencies in the whole value chain. And what I said before, I think sustainability is one of the big reasons and the big whys, but there's many other things which are spin-off also related to sustainability. But if you think about the whole value chain, how inefficient sometimes it is in textiles, and what the waste is, there is so much to improve besides sustainability, cost efficiency, forecasting, many other areas which I believe can benefit from a higher transparency. And for us, it's important to have this insight, also to be able to see where we can contribute and where we can contribute more, and how we can find together better solutions.
Okay, so the fact that so Harold, you're saying the fact that let's say VSM is actually processing your EcoVero fibers in their fabrics, or Hangzhou, Jiayi, or GMS, or also on the call are processing Tencel and EcoVero in their finished garment. It allows you to maybe reach out to those fabric mills, garment makers, think through collaboration projects, drive deeper engagement, support them in branding and marketing, for example. I mean, you talked about supply chain forecasting. I mean, that's an interesting take, that you are saying it could also potentially help you on your demand management or supply management.
Definitely, yeah. I believe that now, I mean, compared with other industries, you mentioned, for example, automotive, where a lot of the raw materials providers, they produce made to order in our case, it doesn't work there yet. You know, we still produce made to stock, and that is and I mean, in overall in business, it's quite an ancient concept. So if we move to a much more accurate forecasting and a much more accurate prediction of volume and volume streams, then efficiencies will increase a lot. And I'm not talking only about our efficiencies, but also the efficiencies for the next in line, you know, until the brands and retailers.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a very interesting thought in terms of, you know, how it could help even in supply chain demand planning optimization. There are a few other questions coming through, but let's pick that up towards the after the session of the getting the industry perspective from our supply chain partners who are on the call. So with this, I would like to welcome the three industry leaders on the call, Jiayi, David, and London. We first start with Jiayi, from your side, you know, how you're driving traceability at Pallava Group VSM. I think you have also been one of the early supporters of Textile Genesis in India in the very beginning. In fact, I remember kind of testing this idea with you to make sure, you know, how would suppliers respond to that? And I think it was your part of your encouragement that allowed us to continue on this journey. But also you have moved quite a bit on this journey. One of the largest processor of you know, man-made cellulosic on the Indian subcontinent. So getting your perspective, you know, how you're dealing with this challenge. You know, how have you changed any of your internal processes to actually meet the brand requirements, and how do you fulfill that? So Jiayi, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Gautam. You know, it was it's a pleasure to be here, and you know, happy that we could contribute you know, in the initial stages with the ideas of how to build a good traceability platform. So just you know, like to take a few minutes in introducing Pallava Group for the benefit of all those in the call. Pallava is basically a spinning and a fabric mill with an annual turnover of $430 million. One of the largest you know, supply chain partner in wood-based cellulose fibers. Next slide, please. You know, our daily capacity in yarn is about 370 tons of yarn per day, with net fabrics about 30 tons, and woven fabrics is about 650,000 meters per day. This is our capacity. And you know, one of the key differentiator of Pallava is that, you know, 80% of our energy comes from our captive renewable you know, capacities. So we have you know, since sustainability is a very important aspect of our the way we conduct our business. So you know, we focus on using sustainable raw materials, using sustainable energy, sustainable practices. So this is a very important thing for us. Next one, please. And you know, we are associated with all the key brands globally, and we do our best to you know, facilitate a smooth supply chain for all these brands. Next one, yeah. So you know, talking about traceability, I think a lot has been talked about traceability. Now today, consumers, as you know, everybody has said that, you know, today's consumer cares to know, you know, what they're buying, and where are these you know, their products coming from, you know, right from the source of the you know, raw material to the you know, where it is being made, whether it is a sustainable product, whether, you know, it has been made in a sustainable way, has the workers been paid right wages and so on. So, and the global supply chain needs to adapt and is a greater need for the supply chain to have transparency and traceability to deliver this requirement of today's customers. And talking about few supply challenges, we talked a lot about how disintegrated and fragmented today's the textile value chain is, and one of the key challenges that some of the challenges that comes is that not all brands are on the same platform, so it creates more work for a supply chain partner like us. So it increases more workload for a partner. And fortunately, technology today is evolving. Technology is a key enabler for traceability, and and it is changing at a very dynamic pace. So I hope that in future, with all brands working together, coming together to on traceability and transparency, I think it would be ideal to have everybody in a same platform, or where all platforms can be connected. This is something, a wish list from a producer point of view, because even today I see a lot of brands or value chain is working with proof of documentation, taking invoices, transaction proof to have the transparency and traceability. So in that, data security is again, it was talked about data security, about for a company like us, data security is very, very important. So hopefully, and fortunately, with a platform like Textile Genesis, those challenges can be mitigated. So this is one of the challenges I thought I should highlight. And like I said, we were one of the pioneers, working with Mr. Amit on how traceability can be improved. We've sat in many sessions, trying to make a blueprint of how this the industry is working and how we can improve the traceability. And again, it was a great motivation for Pallava, and in fact, Bestseller was one of the first brand that brought us also into the Textile Genesis platform. So I think we are in a very nascent stage of traceability and sustainability and visibility and everything. What I would like to to see going forward, because there are a lot of suppliers, a lot of producers, value chain partners. Can Textile Genesis be a platform, reliable platform for identifying quality vendors? Because we were talking about scorecards, for vendors, but can Textile Genesis eventually be the platform where suppliers can they use Textile Genesis as a platform to identify credible, transparent, and good suppliers. So this is something that is that can happen, and also, like I said, like collaborate. Today we cannot work in silos because it's going to be even more complex with more people taking traceability as their as a way of doing business. So this is going to increase the complexity, and how can the technology be enabled to bring all brands in a single platform. This is something that that can happen. So with this, I would like to finish my presentation. And
no, thank you. Thank you, Nilesh. Yes, no, thank you. It was very, very insightful, very precise, and to the point, like you always are. Let me just pick one of the last points that you mentioned. That using the platform to identify quality suppliers, quality vendors. Can you just elaborate? I mean, how do you define what you mean by quality?
Good. See, because there are various aspects for that a supplier would be or a customer would be looking for in a vendor, right? So maybe it's something to do with how like if somebody is looking for a product that is made with say net carbon zero, maybe Textile Genesis can help identify the kind of vendors that a customer is looking for in terms of their sustainability practices, in terms of those things can be highlighted so that the supply chain can choose the their vendors in the platform.
No, I fully agree. I think it could also be as simple as this, which are the players processing. Harold was talking about Tencel, Cobero, which key suppliers are processing, let's say, a fabric or yarn or finished garment and so on for different types of materials, organic cotton, regenerative cotton. And we can even, because we capture parameters like yarn count, we capture parameters like GSM of the fabric, is it knitted or woven? So we could even kind of further fine tune and say, look, which are processing coarse yarn versus fine yarn, who are processing, low GSM fabrics versus heavy GSM fabrics or light GSM fabrics. So we can actually kind of further fine tune because of those quality parameters we capture as part of the traceability itself. No, great. Thanks again. Raj, will come back towards the end. Overall, other questions. Now let's move to our second panelist, David Xu. So David, thanks again for joining. It's great to have you on the call. And also, we know that I think the work that you've been doing at Hangzhou Jiayi in terms of number of transactions, in terms of volume, is very significant. So thank you for pretty deep and intense engagement. You're also one of the major users on the system. So would love to hear your thoughts about your journey and how do you see traceability evolving, and what are the changes that you have done within your business to actually fulfill that. So David, over to you.
Okay, and hello everyone. It's so glad to have a meeting with you. And before this meeting, I want to introduce our company firstly. And our Jiayi group have the dyeing and printing mill, and also have a garment mill. And our garment mill over 30 years, and our fabric mill, dyeing printing mill over 10 years. Actually, HM is our main and key customer, and we are making the TG platform with HM from 2021. And it's very, very important for us because we have make a lot of conscious material like the Lenzing material and the Levico and Cyclus with the Lucerne company, and like some recycled polyester. And so actually, our target is 100 materials conscious production with 2025 at present, and our 70% material is conscious production now. For our dyeing printing mill, we have 3 workshops. One workshop is for the nylon cotton production. One workshop is for the polyester, for the viscose tensile production. One is for the digital production. And our digital production is high-speed production machine. And the capacity for digital printing is 4 million yards per month. For the nylon and cotton viscose production capacity, about 10 million yards per month. And for the recycled polyester and the viscose and the tensile and some cotton fabric, also over 20 million yards per month. Actually, it is so glad to meeting everyone in this time. And actually, I'm Mark Spencer, and we so glad to meet you here. And we have made Mark Spencer garments order 10 years ago, actually. But now, because Chinese garment price is higher, and we are no chance to take a Mark Spencer garments order. But we have made the fabric with Mark Spencer and sending the fabric to the Bangladesh. Because we have the global office in Bangladesh, one is in Bangladesh, one in Indonesia, one is Iran. Actually, we also have a meeting planned with Bestseller, and we will be with the Bestseller Shanghai office in this Friday, because Bestseller is talking me how we make the cycles mature, and so we wanted to have a chance to cooperate with Bestseller in future. This time I have prepared 3 topics. One is the value for the traceability. Second is Jiayi performance. Third is experience sharing. Okay, let's later. Values of traceability. I think many person is talking this is long times. And the first, I think Lenzing's director Howard say is very important, and because transparency can improve the words, and traceability is very important. And supplier China traceability and transparency creates both sustainable and which will be ultimately needed the positive change the whole fashion industry. And the second, brands want to provide the information about products and various parties in order to meet their social expectations. And the third, transparency and traceability, and it can empower customers to take informed decision for the products they buy. Okay, let's later. This is our performance from 2021. For the garments, and we have finished about 4.34 million pieces garments. For the fabric, and we have finished about more than 25 million yards. And for 42 garment supplier covering MMCF and recycled polyester. Okay, let's later. Jiayi experience sharing, and the first is supplier early involvement and training. The third is incoming data control. Third is outgoing data control, and the last is the right person. Okay, let's later. Supplier earlier involvement and training is very important, because communication is very important. Because some supplier chain don't know what is the teach platform, and we need to be teach them. And we need to make sure upstream suppliers will cooperate with TG data transcation to avoid the back and forth communication after order placements. And the second, to push and make sure the upstream suppliers register on TG platform on time with sales certificates were set up before the order placements. And at last is to invite upstream suppliers to our office for training, share our internally design manual with them, and to guide them daily operation on TG platform. Okay, let's. income data control. After order placed, inform the supplier to do the TG data translation on time, and remind them to inform their upstream supplier too. Second, to mark the TG data requirements in their contracts when placing the order to the suppliers. And at last, for the order with large quantities, and we encourage supplier to upload partly and finishing the whole translation within 2 weeks after last delivery. Outgoing data control for our TG garment maker raw accounts. We download the PO list every week to monitor the PO status and make sure to fulfill the PO which shipments are happening in the coming 2 weeks in priority. And second, for our TG fabric mill and dyeing finish raw accounts, after shipments, the business team must finish their TG data uploading with 2 weeks when receive the customer requirements. Okay, and this is our appearance sharing to everyone. And if you have any question and have any help problems, you can contact with our TG platform, TG in charge person. And last, we think the most important thing is the right person. If you wanted to finish fill the data on the TG platform, the right person is very, very important. First is each internal business team has a limited person of contact to collect the required information to Jiayi TG accounts admin user. The second, TG admin user monitors the PO shipments status and do TG translation weekly. Third, to encourage upstream suppliers to limited one person to handle the TG data. Because if the supplier chain and not have the right person to fill the data, it's very hard to finish their task. And last, I want to have a big thanks for HMI, Henry Zhang, and TG China, Simon. And they give us help us a lot, because sometimes they offer many best practice for our reference. And sometimes we are discussing how to control the data, how to finish the KPI, and how to make it much better. So it's really very thanks for the help from Henry and Simon. Okay, at the last, this is our TG admin user, Sarah, and you can send an email to Sarah, or you can have a talking with Sarah, and we can sharing our appearance to how to control the TG platform. And we hope TG platform doing better in future. And because now at parents sometimes.
Thank you, David. I think it was very interesting, and especially I liked your perspective when you say, the title that said right person. So you go into very operational details, how you have nominated people within your company, and how the admin is actually supposed to be responsible to follow up with upstream suppliers, that they are actually doing their work. So I think it seems like a pretty robust process you have set up, not only within your Hangzhou Jiayi, but also outside, with your suppliers, so that they actually provide the right inputs to you at right time. So I think this was a very insightful. And the second interesting thing that you highlight, which we have always known, because that's why we have invested significantly in China with Simon and the team around, and now about 5 people full time just in China, is the engagement between the suppliers and us, and also the regional offices of brands, right? And I think that linkages between suppliers, the brand's regional offices, and our local team is very, very important to drive engagement with the suppliers in the local country and the local region. In fact, I think when I was listening to you, I was just thinking aloud, perhaps we should do webinars like this, but more physical, country by country. Maybe we should do something in China, with regional offices of brands and our regional team, and I'll get the suppliers and do everything, in Mandarin. And likewise, we can do one in Bangladesh, one in the Indian subcontinent. I think those would be good, investments from everyone if we do those kind of regional specific webinars following on this global industry webinar. Yeah, because it drives
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Sheshe, David. Sheshe, thanks again.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your contribution. Now let's move to GMS Composites. Lenin is Assistant General Manager at GS Composite in Bangladesh. We've also been engaged with GMS for quite some time. So Lenin, over to you in terms of sharing your perspective, some of the challenges you faced and also how you tackle those challenges. Lenin, can you hear us? Let's pick up some of the questions that have come through in the chat, because this is a quite interesting. So first question that comes, which is more for the brand partners. So I'm here again looking at, Ponil, Catherine, Meryl, Sandra can pitch in. The question is to the panelists of brands: are business continuity and legislation sufficient factors to get supply chain partners on board? Or are there other win-win opportunities that you think about that can accelerate the journey towards achieving critical mass for traceability? So essentially, the question is asking is business continuity and legislation, which was kind of two common reasons mentioned for traceability. Maybe it's not, very, very strong incentive. Okay, they have to do it, but are there other good win-win opportunities that can actually help perhaps suppliers drive business, drive growth when they actually, support or get behind traceability? I mean, what's your perspective? Or any win-win opportunity? Maybe it's around innovation or collaboration. Yes.
I can. Oh, sorry, Meryl.
You go ahead, Brunel.
No, I was just going to first you say maybe coming legislation is not a driver for the supply chain, but honestly, it has to be, because as brands and retailers going forward, we will be held accountable for our full upstream supply chain. So will the suppliers in the supply chain. So I think actually it must be a driver also for the supply chain. Even it might feel right now that this is like a brand or retailer business or case or reason, but it should be, and that is really bringing that why and that understanding to the supply chain. I mean, that responsibility might sit with us as brands and retailers, but it needs to be a driver also for the supply chain.
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that. I mean, we're already seeing that in other, maybe not in textiles, but in hard goods like timber, for example. This is a responsibility of anyone importing timber into the EU, for example. We're only going to see more and more of that. So I would say the legislation being a sufficient factor, that's going to get more and more. It will be the main factor, I think.
Okay.
But in terms of more short-term win-win, it's a lot about being able to position yourself as an actor that can actually provide transparency and therefore more sustainable options. There's more sustainable business because you can provide the visibility and where the impact and improvements need to be made or are already made. So yeah,
and with that, it becomes also a long, maybe a little bit longer term win-win, right? Because eventually there will be supply chain partners who are not on board with transparency and traceability, from whom we as brands and retailers can't continue to purchase products from. So yeah.
I think that's a very good point. I think, Ponil, Meryl, what you're saying, essentially what we're saying is that legislation will create a level playing field. So every supplier has to operate at the same level, and you cannot have suppliers not operating at the same level. And when you create a level playing field, essentially you kind of raise the standard of the entire industry, and players who don't move, as you say, will not essentially survive, because they won't be able to supply to sufficient quantity of brands or global brands. Maybe they will only focus on the domestic market in parts of Asia where there may not be strong legislations. But essentially, if you are servicing, European market and US market in terms of retail, where legislations are much, much farther ahead versus, let's say, domestic legislation in India or parts of Asia, I think you have to then, kind of raise your standard. And it's a license to operate. I mean, you don't have a license to supply to those brands. And it's in one way, it's good because it creates a level playing field. So no one supplier is a disadvantage because they're leading it and they have to invest in it. Yeah. Now, a question comes for us. So it's for Textile Genesis, that textile industry is highly fragmented, whereas automotive and electronics is not. So did we do anything specific to create textile traceability? So only thing I would say is that, when we started end of 18, beginning of 19, the first 6 months to 1 year, we didn't write a single piece of code, right? Because although we're a technology platform, you would imagine you will immediately start programming, but we didn't do that. So what did we do in the first 6 months? We did very detailed work on modeling of the supply chain. And as we were discussing, went to Jiayi and in Erode, I made a couple of trips and sat down, this is the whole supply chain. How do we model the conversion loss? And I still remember very vividly in your meeting room, on this blackboard, we are discussing about losses and how to model different types of yarns in knits versus wovens. How do we capture the GSM of the fabric, because woven fabric is only shipped in meters or yards or inches, and you don't want suppliers to do the conversion because in their invoice it's only written about meters and yards. So, but if you capture GSM and width, we can do that automatic conversion to weight. I mean, those are very, very fruitful discussions, but that's what we did. The first 6 months was all about building deep supply chain insights, deep supply chain modeling, and then actually creating the platform and the technology around it. So to the question, I think that's a very specific part, because traceability by definition is very deeply woven with the entire value chain. So modeling of the supply chain, modeling of conversion loss, wastage loss is really, really fundamental to build a good traceability solution. Then the next question comes to brands. Are there any specific traceability audits that brands are doing on their supply chains to ensure visibility? Now, this is interesting. At least I'm not aware of that brands are doing any audits on top of, what you have from certified materials or what you create on, on traceability solution. But maybe I missed it. So Meryl, Pernil, are you doing any traceability audits on the supply chains to ensure visibility or anything on top?
No, I mean, not specific traceability audits, but providing supply chain transparency, making product and material traceability possible is a point of discussion when onboarding new suppliers.
Yeah, I mean, that's
again, it has to be a standard way of working, right? So it needs to be brought into the conversation at an early stage.
Yeah.
I would just agree with Pernil there that we're looking when we're working on getting a standard way of working. So working with Textile Genesis and these types of platforms is the way that we're doing the traceability. So it's not that we're doing anything additional or extra beyond that. So yeah, I think that would almost defeat the purpose of finding an industry way of working.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. What we don't want is too many different ways of doing it. I mean, we are a lot of brands and retailers, and there are even more garment manufacturers and even more mills and even more fiber suppliers, right? So streamlining things and agreeing on a standard way of working with transparency and traceability as the preconditions is the way forward.
Absolutely. In fact, what we don't want is to actually create another jungle of audits on traceability, because we already have a lot on social compliance, on environmental compliance, with each brand actually creates their social environmental audits towards suppliers, and I think that's being harmonized. But it's great that that we can do that. So I think I'll have one more question for us, and then I think we'll close the session, because we're still not able to get GMS from Lenin back into the panel discussion. And I'm just looking at yeah, I think maybe let's pick up the last one, which is also a tricky one. I think we also picked up a couple of times. If we have upstream suppliers which are not directly connected to you as a brand, how do we build engagement with them if they're reluctant to join Textile Genesis, or if they're reluctant to contribute to traceability, especially the upper tiers? I mean, I have a bit of a perspective on this, but why don't we start with you, and then I'll just build on that. So how do you tackle scenarios when the spinner is reluctant, or a weaver or knitter where you don't have a direct commercial relationship, and how do you engage them?
Yeah, well, I think that, I mean, that's a real struggle and a real challenge. And I think Meryl addressed it quite well in the beginning, saying supply chain engagement, right? It also means that with that we need to step out of what we are normally doing, and bringing knowledge, bringing perspective to also upstream suppliers with whom we do not have a direct financial transactions or transactions with. So it's really about engagement, and it's really about collaboration, and sharing what it is that is coming. Let's use legislation again as an example, what's coming at our end, and bring that understanding also to the upstream supply chain. Join meetings, join calls. Yeah, I think that would be my answer.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think this is where also when we had Harold was early in the beginning in the call, our relationship that we have with the fiber producers, whether it's Lenzing or Birla or Schneider Group, engaging these key upstream fiber producers or tops manufacturers to engage the spinner, because they have direct connection with them. So I think we see that helps a lot in driving engagement. Sometimes leveraging the standards relationship, whether it's with Textile Exchange or US Cotton or Supima, where these players also have a lot of deeper engagement, with the value chain actors. So it's always it's a multi-pronged approach. There is no easy answer, as you were saying, Purnil. There's no silver bullet here. We have to look case by case. Maybe sometimes we just ask tier 1 supplier if they have a good relationship. Tier 1 supplier could challenge tier 2 via that, starting at the beginning of the chain with fiber producers, where we have now close to 300 of the leading fiber producers across MMCs and recycled polyesters. We engage them, and sometimes it's standards body. Yeah,
and I think that it is really about connecting the dots.
Yeah.
And then verifying the data and that you pick from those dots. And I think it is a really good point, because all links in the supply chain are connected via a financial transaction one way or the other, and then it's building on that relationship, and then maybe also actually bringing every link together, like you're doing now today in a session like this, right? Bring the discussion to the table, the dialogue, and understanding that it is a collaborative effort.
No, absolutely great. So I think this is with that, I would think with that thought that it's a collaborative effort. We have to bring everyone on the table, have an open conversation, and then continue to drive the engagement. I think with that, I would like to end the session today. But one of the interesting thoughts I want to leave everyone is perhaps, if you could share either in the chat or separately with us, whether it would make sense for us to do a session like this, but we do it more specific country by country. So we might do one session similar in China, where we do it with all the supply chain actors, brands, and local suppliers. We do one in India, one in Bangladesh, perhaps one in Turkey. Is this, would that be good, and would there be enough appetite for both supply chain actors and brands to kind of participate in that session? We should still continue because this is very easy. We can get people from all over the world. We don't have to worry about venue and event. So of course, those things takes much more logistic planning here. We have people from all over the world just in a quick span of time. So in that way, it's also quite good. But I want to also thank our panelists, especially if I start from the top that I'm seeing, Jiayi, Ponil, David, Lalin, and Catherine, Sandra, and Meryl. I really appreciate your preparation for this webinar, for contributions and great discussion. So really appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Abhijit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone. So with that, we would like to end the webinar. So thanks, everyone. Have a good day ahead. Thank you.